If it weren't for modern medicine and technology, what would have killed you by now? I have a funny story your crazy experience reminded me of, and I'm glad you're okay. BTWBCWTF. A friend had his gallbladder removed and the surgeon accidentally nicked his liver, but they unknowingly sent him home while he was bleeding internally. He nearly died, and after a couple weeks in the ICU, he recovered. We hadn't seen him for weeks when he finally shows up one day looking awful, horribly gaunt, sallow, about 10 years older. So he's telling us this harrowing story with exhausted eyes and an absolutely flat effect when he says, "And then the surgeon licked my liver." Instead of the intended nicked my liver and be all about fell on this floor from laughter. Thankfully it helped him to perk up quite a bit after that, but now any and every time I hear the word surgery and liver I automatically think about poor Matt having his liver licked by an awful doctor. Right now I am typing this with one hand. There's a bandage on the thumb of my left hand. I didn't cut my stupid nails properly, so my thumb got an inflammation, and it got so bad that my doctor is basically pumping me full with antibiotics like there's no tomorrow. This should go away in a few days, but I think if I lived maybe 200 years earlier, the inflammation would have cost me at least my thumb, maybe even my life, just because of a little bit of keratin. Lesson learned: cut your damn nails with care. I was hospitalized for a kidney infection at age 4. I've taken antibiotics for strep throat I don't know how many times. If I managed to survive those things, then I would have killed myself, since I wouldn't have my antidepressants. Edit. Oh, and my wisdom teeth might have paralyzed my face, broken my jaw, or something, so I could also have died from starvation. Asthma. Asthma exists in my family history and has in fact been a cause of death for some of the older branches of the tree. Severe asthma during the cold, dry winter months was the reason my grandfather moved from Canada to Florida. There are a plethora of allergies in my family that skips a generation. My cousin had food allergies to just about everything. He would be dead too, without modern medicine. The complete opposite almost happened to before my birth. My mom was on a business trip when she was around 7-8 months pregnant with me when she got a checkup, and the doctor couldn't feel my heartbeat and told my mom that I had died. When she came back from the trip, she got another checkup to be sure that I was dead before removing me, and this doctor discovers my heart was in fact beating, but the heartbeat was weak, so the previous doctor must have missed it. Now many years later, here I am, nearly aborted due to modern technology. I got an inflamed appendix at age 8. Man, one of very few times my mom realized something was wrong with me when I didn't want to eat the fancy dinner we were invited to. It almost burst. Surgeon said I must have had a high pain threshold. Oh well, heard like fuck. Third or fourth day in, taxi drove us 100 miles, 160 kilometers, to the nearest capable unit. This was 24 years ago. I have a very severe allergy to raspberries. Just raspberries. No other berries. Most doctors don't even believe me when I tell them. But if I have even the smallest amount by accident, even a little bit of cross-contamination, I need either an EpiPen or an ambulance immediately. So thank God for that and Benadryl. Blood poisoning. I was changing the drum brakes on my car and scraped the palm of my hand. A few hours later, my wife noticed a red line on my arm and put a line on it and checked again in 15 minutes. It slowly was creeping up my arm and she rushed me to the ER. I had no clue about that, but she had seen it before. I got to the ER and the red line was 3/4 way to the crook of my elbow, and the mark she made 1/2 hour earlier was about 3 inches below that. The doctor told the nurse to get me on 4 antibiotics and monitor me until they got me a room. I felt fine and asked him what was going on. He told me if that red line hits my armpit I would likely not survive. I had to spend 3 days on heavy 4 antibiotics, but it went away. I never felt sick, and if my wife didn't notice, I would have never gone until I felt sick, and that would have been too late. I would have been dead. Childbirth. After being 2 weeks overdue, I labored for 33 hours before getting a C-section because my baby's head was cocked to the side and never descended properly. Turns out, she had an issue that made it hard for her neck to flex to navigate birth. Her heart rate kept dropping and towards the end was taking longer and longer recover. She ended up in the NICU for a few hours after birth and I had a minor hemorrhage, but we're both healthy and thriving now. Without modern medicine, she would have died and I wouldn't be far behind. Childbirth. First son came into the world with few complications. Second son caused a postpartum hemorrhage. An excellent job. Fantastic L&D nurse and modern medicine kept me and my son safe and in good health. No lasting effects. Just needed a couple of bags of Pitocin after the birth to be 100% sure the bleeding was stopped. Had my son on a Wednesday, but that Sunday I felt fantastic. Any of these, mumps or rubella as a toddler, chickenpox at age 6, I was sick for over a month, it was bad. The hardcore giardiasis that plagued me for months at age 9-10, the nasty kidney infection the year after that. If I got through those, the flu kicked my ass at age 14, many other bouts of gastroenteritis, including a few times when I needed to be on a drip. Childbirth. Possibly blood clots in lungs due to pregnancy, infections from ovarian cysts bursting, polyps in my colon that could have grown to be malignant, severe cellulitis X2. I'm lucky to be alive now and live in a country with socialized healthcare. Glasses. I am almost twice the definition of legally blind. I have worn them for almost 20 of my 27 years. I can't tell who someone is if they stand more than a few feet away. I would die so fast out in the wild and probably wouldn't even fully see it coming. But with glasses, high index are all I can use to fit into frames. I can see 25/20 or slightly better than 20/20. This has only happened in the last few years and I love it when people are surprised I can read signs they cannot. Thank God for science. I went to a party one night and woke up 20 hours later in the hospital with the back of my skull caved in. They cut a piece out the size of your palm out of the back of my head and replaced it with a metal plate. My brain was bleeding and there was an air pocket in it. I don't know why I'm still here. I was born with, to make a long story short, underdeveloped colon. I had to endure many surgeries and still have to do a procedure every day because the muscles in my abdomen are underdeveloped. But the technology that was needed to keep me alive is really only existed for the last 50 years. So if I had been born at basically any earlier point in all of human history I would have been dead shortly after childbirth. So I am very thankful to be in the position that I am in. First answer that comes to mind is chickenpox, but more thought-out answer is that my mom tore something while giving birth to me and the bleeding wouldn't stop. Without modern medicine, it's likely she would have bled to death. I would have been motherless and possibly have lived a completely different life where chickenpox probably would have killed me. Chickenpox. Never developed the immunity for it. I've had it 3 times already. Each time worse than the last. Doctors say the older you are when you get it, the worse it is for your body. So, babies and small children get it and, usually, get over it within a week or so. Older kids and teens, maybe a few weeks. The 3rd time I had it, I was in the hospital. I've been lucky. Everything that modern technology saved me from was caused by technology in the first place, so it doesn't count. On the other hand, my brother had appendicitis, my sister had pneumonia, and my other sister was born prematurely. All 3 of them would have died without modern medicine. Asthma. Developed at around 10. It was worst when I was about 21. Couldn't go more than 4 hours without rescue inhaler. Horrible quality of life. Went and finally had it assessed and eventually got referrals to an immunologist and pulmonologist. Started taking serious stuff to keep it under control. 2 different daily inhalers, a pill, allergy meds, and even a strong antacid to mitigate any possible inflammation from acid reflux, all with rescue inhaler use that was fairly regular. Started taking a trial shot meant for eczema, dermatitis, and now I'm completely off all daily meds, save a few days a month or when I'm working out, with basically 0 rescue inhaler use. Childbirth. Right after natural birthing of my second child, my bleeding was so heavy the medical staff hovered for 24 hours non-stop with clotting drugs and other interventions. I'll never forget the doctor telling me that if it had been 100 years ago I would have been one of the many women who died from childbirth. Appendicitis at the age of 12. It apparently was bad. I was on the operating table within 2 hours of admission. Severe pancreatitis at the age of 16-17. Among other things, I had a bit of a drinking problem back then. It was messed up, yes, and I am really not proud of past me. But things got a whole lot better since. That 4-week stint in hospital was the wake-up call I needed. Artificial food coloring. Had a 41 degrees Celsius minimum fever for 5 days or something thanks to that shit. Stomach couldn't take anything in without instantly throwing it out by puking. Got N4 drip to keep hydrated. No meds or anything, but I still think N4 drip counts as modern medicine. Was like 8-10 years old as well. Went from a normal kid to almost no fat in 2 weeks. I won't get that sick anymore, but a little bit of artificial food coloring still gets me nauseous and perhaps gets me a slight fever the next day, and maybe I start puking. A man-made problem needed a man-made solution. Luckily that shit is banned in my country and a lot of other European countries. It is absolute garbage and intenser for ingestion. There are many natural food coloring variants out there, so there is no need for artificial ones to exist either. Both of my parents' own birth complications aside, I would not have survived past about a year and a half if I'd been born a few decades earlier than I was. I can't remember what the exact condition was, but it was essentially causing me constant infections. My parents had to give me antibiotics to treat it until I was old enough to survive going under the knife to fix it. Still have the scar 23-ish years later. There were a few strep throat episodes that got pretty bad when I was a kid. I think they could have taken me if it hadn't been for antibiotics. Barring those, I know for sure my gallbladder issues would have. I had a gallstone the size of a ping pong ball wedged in the opening to my bile duct. When I had my cholecystectomy, the surgeon was shocked by the size of the stone. When I was born I couldn't come out naturally. I had to be taken straight out of the stomach. So they put the bumming cream on my mother's stomach. The cream didn't work, so when they put the thing into my mom's stomach to cut it open, she felt it. They had to then put her under for a few hours as they proceeded with the birth. When I was born I was taken immediately into care and my mother couldn't see me for the next 2 days. My mom was also taken into care as she felt very unwell and sore from the eventful pregnancy. So yeah, that's how my disaster of an ass was created, in a disaster. Nothing so far. I mean, it's hard to judge whether it get poisoned by tap water, but in terms of illnesses or disease or injuries, I never had any big ones that would be life-threatening even in medieval times. So maybe the tap water and general food condition. Yeah, every time I went to get new glasses or just a checkup, the doctors always call in the students to check it out. So basically, English not my first language, so if I get some terms wrong you know why. I got injured at 8 years old when branch of a bush hit me in the eye. I got an internal blood loss. The lens, or crystal or whatever its name in English is, got squished and it stayed shaped like a half moon, which I could see if I had the sun hitting me from the right angle, until my second surgery. So I went to the hospital after 2 days of pain, and was rushed to OR because if my parents waited a bit more I would have lost the eye. They opened my eye up, sutured whatever was to suture and put everything back together, putting a stitch on my cornea to keep it closed, which fucked up my recovery big time, but we'll get back to that. So after 2 months and out from the hospital they took the stitch off and I was good to go, just had to do a visit with a specialist once a year. It all happened between June and August, and I got my first specialist visit in December where he got mad at the surgeon because of that stitch on my cornea that left a scar that makes the light bend weird and it made me see things distorted with peripheral vision. But long story short, I had to wait until I turned 21 to do a better surgery because my eye had to finish to develop, Fast forward to my 21st birthday and I'm in the hospital again. During the years my iris started to roll up on itself, leaving just a big pupil, which made me hate being outside, where even the smallest reflection or white thing where the sun shined on felt like staring at the sun. So to avoid this they decided the best approach was to roll my iris back and put a stitch to keep it in place. Take my crystal lens out and put an artificial one, plus a rigid contact lens that makes me focus at 100 meters, because my iris is dead and dripped. It won't make my pupil smaller or larger to focus on things. After a few years I fell off my bike and hit my head, with the helmet, and the stitch ripped off. So I went under surgery again and they decided to put 2 stitches this time, even though I asked to have a colored lens instead so to avoid another surgery if I ever happened to hit my head or get punched. Years I fell off my bike and hit my head, with the helmet, and the stitch ripped off. So I went under surgery again and they decided to put 2 stitches this time, even though I asked to have a colored lens instead so to avoid another surgery if I ever happened to hit my head or get punched. Interesting story, thanks for sharing. Birth. I had to be suctioned out because my giant head got stuck. Back in the day they easily could have killed me with forceps. Strep throat as a kid. Kidney infection in my 20s. I thought it was just an annoying thing you treat with antibiotics. Turns out it can go septic very fast if you don't treat it. When I was a baby my kneecaps nucleus weren't developing right. I had to wear a dilator in my legs and couldn't walk nor crawl while I was wearing it. In the past I would probably develop twisted legs because no one could have done anything to prevent it, so my life expectancy would have been very low. Had to get a third of my intestines removed when I was baby because they got tied in a knot. Had to get another surgery in my 20s because the scar tissue got tied in another knot around the intestines I still have left. Lol. Was a pretty routine procedure, but 100 years ago I would most definitely be dead as a baby. Kind of weird to think about. When I was a kid I used to be in daycare. I was still in diapers and stuff so I don't remember this at all, but apparently one day I was getting my diaper and changed. The people changing diapers hadn't been washing their hands. One of the kids was sick and when she changed my diaper I caught their sickness. I don't know what it was but it nearly killed me. My eyes were sunken in and I had really dark circles, couldn't eat, horrible diarrhea, puked a lot, and I overall just got really frail and weak. I had a rough childhood. Type 1 diabetes and all the SHT that comes with it regardless of control. Diagnosed 30 years and technology just keeps improving things and making them easier. Also had total loss of vision thanks to bleeds in both eyes due to complications which was corrected and left me with 20/20 vision for now. Modern medicine is incredible. I will say I am based on the UK and feel for my American friends who struggle to afford the basic needs to care for this disease as well as all the countries with a healthcare system not fit for illnesses like this. The kidney reflux disease, jaundice, or whooping cough I had within the first year one was alive. I was a very ill baby, but I'm fine now at it, or I may not have been born at all because my mom had heart issues when she was pregnant with me and had to wear a heart monitor. I was also too young to have the whooping cough vaccine, hence why I got whooping cough. I had to use a breathing machine. All of this happened when I was a few months to a year old. It's a toss-up between an obstructing kidney stone causing severe swelling in both kidneys as well as kidney failure and giving birth. Both of these issues occurred simultaneously. And I had severe preeclampsia as well. I ended up getting sepsis 2 days after having my son. My nurses thought we were in the clear after such a scary delivery and then my organs started shutting down. My kidney infection from the obstruction was asymptomatic. I was literally discharged after 3 vitals checks throughout the morning. Less than an hour after being discharged my health declined incredibly quickly. Just the opposite. I'd likely die as a Viking or a Roman legionnaire, but via old age. I'd train like a Spartan and fight in a unit as tough as myself. I'd laugh holding the line, and I'd retire to a nice villa in northern Italy or somewhere on the coasts of northern Europe. Plus my name would be sung in banquet halls across the land. They'd fear only my wrath, but sing my praises as well.